welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here are the stories that we're looking at within the hour. Tensions escalate between India and Pakistan after India launches missile strikes in Pakistan and the Pakistan-administered Kashmir. 133 cardinals enter the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, beginning the process of electing a new pope to replace the late Pope Francis. Plus, we'll learn more about the vote that brought Germany's Friedrich Merz victory as the country's chancellor on Tuesday. Let's begin The World Today. Pakistan has vowed to respond to Indian airstrikes on the country following attacks by a group of terrorists on tourists in Pahalgam. They claim 26 people were killed, 46 others injured from 6 locations attacked. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif claims 5 Indian jets were downed. India, on its part, says the missile strikes are in response to a deadly militant attack on Indian tourists in Pahalgam last month. The army says at least 15 civilians were killed by Pakistani shelling on the side of the de facto border. Indian-administered Kashmir has seen a decades-long insurgency, which has claimed thousands of lives. India and Pakistan both claim that Kashmir is theirs in full. In the meantime, many residents living near the line of control of the de facto border between India and Pakistan are fleeing with their belongings. The University of Kashmir in the city of Srinagar and Indian-administered Kashmir says it is postponing all exams scheduled up until and including on May 10th. India's Minister of State for External Affairs says the whole country is happy that revenge was taken after the strikes on Pakistan. Speaking to journalists earlier today, Kiriti Vardhan Singh said our country gave a befitting reply to those who killed innocent people and widowed women, referencing the deadly attack on tourists in Pahalgam last month. He warns that enemy countries should take the strikes as a message that India has information around every corner after Islamabad reported that 6 locations were hit. More defense coming from India as the country's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri claims India's Operation Sindoor strikes against Pakistan were necessary to prevent impending attacks from terrorist modules. Addressing journalists in New Delhi earlier today, he also accused Islamabad of failing to take action against terrorist infrastructure on its territory following the April attack on tourists in Kashmir.
Pakistani and Pakistan-trained terrorists belonging to the Lashkar-e-Taiba carried out a savage attack on Indian tourists at Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir in India. They murdered 26 people, including 1 national of Nepal, causing the largest number of civilian casualties in a terrorist attack in India since the 26 November 2008 attacks in Mumbai. The attack in Pahalgam was marked by extreme barbarity, with the victims mostly killed with headshots from close range and in front of their families. Family members were deliberately traumatized through the manner of the killing, accompanied by the exhortation that they should take back the message. The attack was clearly driven by the objective of undermining the normalcy returning to Jammu and Kashmir. In particular, it was designed to impact the mainstay of the economy, tourism, with a record 23 million tourists visiting the valley last year. The calculation presumably was that harming growth and development in the Union territory would help keep it backward and create fertile ground for continued cross-border terrorism from Pakistan. The manner of the attack was also driven by an objective of provoking communal discord, both in Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of the nation. It is to the credit of the government and the people of India that these designs were foiled.
Meanwhile, security measures have been heightened in the village of Wuyan in India's Jammu and Kashmir, following the airstrikes by the Indian Army on Pakistan-administered Kashmir today. Armed forces have been seen monitoring the area in response to the recent military escalations. Security vehicles were also seen patrolling the streets, with officers standing guard at key locations. India confirmed it had struck on terrorist infrastructure and hit 9 sites in Pakistan and the Pakistan-controlled part of Kashmir, from where terrorist attacks against India had been planned and directed. In response to last month's deadly militant attack in Kashmir, it added that the attack was focused, measured, and non-escalatory, with non-Pakistani military facilities targeted. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif described it as an act of war and cowardly attacks, saying Pakistan has every right to give a full and strong response to this act of war imposed by India, and a full response is being given. Joining us now is Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies. He's also the head of the Department of History and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos, Professor David Awurawu. Professor, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
There's been tension in Kashmir region since probably even before the 90s. Why is Kashmir, and for the sake of our viewers, why is Kashmir such a contended part for both India and Pakistan?
Yeah, Kashmir is a contested part because many countries claim the place. Not just even India and Pakistan. China also has a claim to Kashmir. And it has historical roots. It has roots in British colonial rule over India, the then India. You recall that the British came to India in the 18th century and governed the place, for a long time until India became independent in 1947. During this period, the Kashmir area was somewhat autonomous. The Sikhs were there, and the British acquired, established their rule over the place. So when independence was granted to India in 1947, and of course to Pakistan, India and Pakistan were actually one country until that time. Yes. They couldn't agree also, just like they are not agreeing now, and they had to partition, India, Pakistan, and both of them got independence in 1947. It was in the course of that partitioning that the job was not neatly done, such that both countries now contest the place. So the northernmost part of the Indian subcontinent. So India, Pakistan, claim the place, and they still claim the place today. There are some arrangements now where India controls some part, Pakistan controls some part, even China controls some part of the area.
Yeah, and
because the demarcation was not very clear in 1947, such that many countries now claim the valley, the huge valley, and that large territory.
Yeah, you're right about that. Not only China as well, I think Nepal even also claims a part of the Kashmir region. So there's an agreement on the ground, that demarcates the region into the Indian-administered Kashmir region, and then there's also the Pakistani-administered Kashmir region. Both sides have kept to this as much as they can, but how do you think that arrangement is going in light of what is happening now?
It has not been neat. Even before the 70s, there had been wars, over the Kashmir area. In August and September 1965, for instance, there was this large violent conflict that took place between India and Pakistan in the Kashmir area. International interventions had to, take place, be carried out, and the UN Security Council had to intervene. There was no resolution then, 211, which helped to resolve the conflict at that time, and then provided some measures, which has ensured a measure of stability in the place. But of course, it's an uneasy camp really that has been in that area over these many decades. Unfortunately, those tensions continue to come up from time to time. Of course, the most recent of which has been that attack, on those tourists a few weeks ago, and of course, India's response last night, which has brought the current, contemporary crisis between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. So that is how it has been. There has not really been absolute stability in the place since 1947. Sometimes there is some calm, and sometimes something comes up which creates tension, and sometimes violence, just as we have seen in the last few weeks in the Kashmir.
Right, and talking about the attack that happened, on the border in April, this is a couple of weeks ago, 26 people were killed, 25 Indians, one Nepali. The Indian government vowed to find the terrorists, even to the ends of the earth, the words of the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. Why has there been so much insistence, not been as much insistence, beg your pardon, from this side of the Pakistanis? They haven't even condemned the violence that happened, and they haven't even tried to debunk any link to the terrorists who carried out the attack.
Yes, that is what is surprising, because how governments have addressed terrorist attacks over the years is that when it occurs, governments come together to try to find those who have carried it out, the perpetrators, and bring them to justice. But in this case, Pakistan has not come out to condemn the terrorists, and hasn't done anything concrete to show that it is opposed to what they have done, and that it is interested in looking for them and then bringing them to justice. That is why India is angry. And you can understand the anger of India, because if such a thing happens, there is no country on earth, no matter how small the country is, and India is by no means a small country, that would go away quietly and do nothing, when the other country has done no concrete thing to show that it condemns it and is supporting efforts to bring the perpetrators to justice. That makes Pakistan's position very suspicious as to whether it was not in support of that attack, and this is where the whole thing is tricky. If Pakistan had come out to condemn it, show solidarity with India, and then give assurance in identifying them and bringing them to justice, India will not respond the way it has done. India has responded the way it has done because Pakistan has done virtually nothing to show that it is interested in, justice for those who were killed a few weeks ago. So one has to ask the Pakistanis, even though they are saying, "Oh, India has come to kill civilians in their country and all that," threatening fire and brimstone. One has to ask, how come the Pakistanis have not taken measures to ensure that these terrorists are brought to justice since this, attack occurred a few weeks ago? And how come they have not condemned it and, assured India of their willingness to ensure that this terrorist attack does not go unpunished? These are the questions that those who will mediate in this conflict will need to ask Pakistan.
Yeah, and we're looking at what could be potentially another war between India and Pakistan from the war that they fought many years ago. Both countries are nuclear powers. How quickly could this situation go south?
It could. One cannot predict once they begin like this, and with the rhetoric that is feisty, things could just go, haywire. Which is why some efforts that have been made here and there to tell the two countries to, de-escalate tension and all that, such comments are welcome. The British Prime Minister has spoken, is willing to mediate. The Americans, well, not as one will expect. Trump just says it's a shame, as he always says, and all that, but hasn't said anything concrete about intervening. You can't tell how things quickly degenerate. And that is why intervention to resolve this conflict that looks very little now, but will become so extensive if nothing concrete is done to bring the parties at war, or parties at war to some kind of understanding. So things could turn topsy-turvy as quickly as one can imagine. Like you said, both countries are nuclear power. They acquired nuclear weapons in 1998. Of course, we always have some assurance that countries that have nuclear weapons know the consequences of using them, and that they are supposed to be using it for deterrence and not for actual fighting. But you may never know, and that is why a quick intervention to resolve this conflict will be a welcome thing, not only for India and Pakistan, but for the entire, international community.
Yeah, and you talked about those international mediations, and I see that a lot of it is tending towards India, calling for nerves not to be frayed, calling for dousing of tensions and all of that. Why do you think there is none of this pressure being put on Pakistan as much as a lot of pressure is put on India? It almost seems like the rest of the world or world leaders know the potential of India in this case.
I think attention is turned to India because it was India that attacked last night. And the thinking is that if India stops the attack, it will create the environment for mediators to come in to mediate. And that if the attacks continue, it will make mediation very difficult because Pakistan will be compelled to also defend itself. Even though the origin of the conflict itself, the casus belli, is the attack and the killing of those tourists in the on the Indian side of Kashmir. But the fact that it was India that attacked last night, the thinking of those who want to mediate is that India has to halt attacks first to give some assurance to Pakistan for mediation to take place. That's why I think the attention is turned to India at this time. But when full mediation commences, of course, the questions I asked earlier regarding why Pakistan has been so lukewarm about cooperating to find those terrorists and bringing them to justice will be asked. And those are the issues that will have to be honestly discussed and some answers provided before some permanent resolution to this conflict can take place. So for now, attention is to India because it was India that attacked, and that attack has to cease, at least for some time, before mediation can take place. All of these are understood by those who are interested in mediating in this conflict.
Wow, it does seem like there might be a bit more mediation coming up in the following weeks. Professor Awarawo, thank you so much for joining us to discuss this.
It's my pleasure.
We're off on a short break on The World Today. Still ahead. US President Donald Trump slams the Biden administration for letting world leaders take advantage of the US. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Let's turn to the war in Ukraine, where a Russian missile and drone attack on the capital, Kyiv, killed a mother and a son. The attacks happened hours before a three-day ceasefire announced by Russia is due to begin. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says only significant intensified pressure on Russia and stronger sanctions can pave the way to diplomacy. Meanwhile, at least 350 flights have been delayed or cancelled due to Ukrainian drone attacks in Russia, so says a Russian tourism body. Airports in parts of western Russia were temporarily closed, making it the second night in a row that travel was disrupted by attacks launched by Kyiv. Most had reopened by early this morning, but the Association of Tour Operators in Russia says at least 60,000 passengers were affected by the disruption. But Russia is currently rehearsing in the capital for a Victory Day parade on Friday, even though both Ukraine and Russia have been launching attacks ahead of the three-day ceasefire, expected to begin at midnight. We reported earlier a drone strike on a residential building in Kyiv killed 2 people, while there have been yet to be any casualties reported from the attacks Ukraine launched at Moscow. Russia's full-scale invasion, which began in February of 2022, has killed thousands of people, has left towns across southern and eastern Ukraine leveled and facing intense aerial attacks. Moscow controls around 20% of Ukrainian territory, including the Crimean Peninsula, which it annexed in 2014. The majority of its control is in eastern Ukraine, as we know it as today. Well, U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce has urged progress in Ukraine talks, saying the war cannot go on forever. She was answering questions at a press briefing on Tuesday. Especially questions regarding Chinese companies producing missiles in Russia. Bruce stated that there are several nations that are responsible for helping move the carnage that is unfolding in Ukraine in this war.
Secretary Rubio joined President Trump in welcoming home Ksenia Karelina to the Oval Office, who was wrongfully detained in Russia for over a year. In his first 100 days, the 47th president has secured the release of 47 unjustly held Americans. No administration has worked so hard or so quickly to bring home U.S. citizens imprisoned abroad. During the meeting, Prime Minister Carney described his intention to increase Canada's defense spending, exceeding President Trump's leadership there and the demand of what he was looking for. 9 years ago, most NATO allies were nowhere near spending 2%. Today, allies agreed that they must increase their defense spending, and every week more are announcing the increase. 18 countries, in fact, since the November election.
Former U.S. President Joe Biden has added his voice into how the Trump administration has handled the war in Ukraine, especially the Russian part. Mr. Biden told a BBC interview that pressure from the Trump administration on Ukraine to give up territory to Russia is modern-day appeasement. In an exclusive interview, his first since leaving the White House, he said Russian President Vladimir Putin believed Ukraine was part of Russia, and anyone who thinks is going to stop if some territory is conceded as part of a peace deal is just foolish. Biden's words. Biden also spoke as allied nations marked the 80th anniversary of VE Day this week. He said he was concerned about U.S.-Europe relations breaking down under President Trump, which he said would change the modern history of the world. White House Communications Director Stephen Chong posted a link to the BBC's exclusive Biden interview on social media, blasting the former president, saying, Joe Biden is a complete disgrace to the country and the office he occupied. He's clearly lost all mental faculties, and his handlers thought it'd be a good idea for him to do an interview and incoherently mumble his way through every answer. Well, current U.S. President Donald Trump has slammed the Biden administration for letting world leaders take advantage of the U.S. amid ongoing trade talks. Trump was making the comment today during a press conference in Washington, D.C. It comes amid trade talks with global leaders on newly imposed tariffs and a failed attempt to secure a trade deal with Canada during a meeting with the country's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney.
Well, I can announce all of them now. I could announce 50 to 100 deals right now because, you know, I'm the shopkeeper and I keep the store. And, you know, I know what countries are looking for and I know what we're looking for. And I can just set those terms and they can go shopping or they don't have to go shopping because everybody wants to shop here. This is like a beautiful store. This is like one of Bernard Arnault, or maybe I should say Alex, even more importantly, young, the future. But Bernard's an honor to have you. We'll have a meeting after this. But he has the greatest stores in the world, and they want to shop. Our country is the greatest store in the world of that kind, and everybody wants a piece of it. And they took advantage of us for years because we allowed our presidents allowed it to happen. You know, I don't blame China, and I don't blame Vietnam, and I could name every single country all the way up and down the line, South Korea. Every single country took advantage of us without exception. Japan, these are friends of mine, but they took advantage of this country. They ripped off our country, selling us millions and millions of cars a year, and we sold them none. We weren't allowed to sell them a car. They took advantage of us. I don't blame them. I blame the people that sat behind that desk that allowed it to happen, but I don't allow it to happen. I didn't in the first term, but this is a much stronger position because we're the greatest economy in history in our first term. Stock market was up 88%, and we had numbers much better than that. But this is going to be, I think, a much better term, and I think the tariffs are coming in, starting to come in. We were losing $5 billion plus a day on trade. Now we're not losing that kind of money, and we'll soon be making a lot of money a day and a year and a month.
Well, speaking of the visit by the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to the White House, his first since becoming Prime Minister, Mark Carney told the U.S. president that Canada is not for sale. He was responding to President Trump raising the prospect of the country becoming the 51st U.S. state. The former central banker responded with a firm but measured tone after President Trump proposed a wonderful marriage of incorporating Canada into the United States. Despite a strained relationship recently between the once close neighbors, the two men lavished praise on each other in what was a largely cordial Oval Office meeting.
You know, takes two to tango, right? But no, I do. I mean, I believe it would be a massive tax cut for the Canadian citizens. You get free military, you get tremendous medical cares and other things. There would be a lot of advantages, but it would be a massive tax cut. And it's also a beautiful, you know, as a real estate developer, you know, I'm a real estate developer at heart. When you get rid of that artificially drawn line, somebody drew that line many years ago with like a ruler, just a straight line right across the top of the country. When you look at that beautiful formation when it's together, I'm a very artistic person, but when I looked at that beauty, I said that's the way it was meant to be. But you know, I do feel it's much better for Canada, but we're not going to be discussing that unless somebody wants to discuss it. I think that there are tremendous benefits to the Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think it would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, you know, Buckingham Palace, that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the President just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership, and I'll say this as well, that the President has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
The Nigerian community in the U.S. is one of the largest outside of Nigeria. There are more than 500,000 Nigerians living and working in the United States who've been impacted by the changes in the U.S. job markets, immigration policies, and the tariff war. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird spoke to Patience Key, the CEO and president of the Nigerians in the Diaspora Chamber of Commerce.
Patience Key, we're always so glad to have you as you have served in a multitude of roles, and most recently you're now serving as the president and CEO of Nigerians in the Diaspora Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for joining us. We know this is a busy time across the world and specifically in the United States. We recently hit the mark of 100 days of the new presidential administration in the U.S. Tell us how Nigerians in the diaspora and Nigerians in the U.S. specifically, as we know there's over 500,000 Nigerians in the U.S. and obviously Nigerian born in the U.S. is increasing by the day. Tell us how this new administration is impacting the Nigerian community and some of the things that are as a result of this new administration.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mara Bird, for this interview. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful time with you always. So thanks for having me. Yeah, Trump is back again as president of the United States. The administration has implemented several policies, you know, which significantly affect the Nigerian community. And like you said, you know, over 500,000 Nigerians in the United States. And we're looking in the areas of immigration and international relations. So in the areas of immigration policies, remember in 2020, during his last administration, you know, we expanded the travel ban to include Nigeria, citing concerns over security protocols and information sharing practices. This action, you know, also restricted Nigerians from obtaining immigration visas also, and which led to also hindering family unifications and a migration of professionals, like people who want to do sabbatical leaves, people who want to do education exchange programs and other things. In addition to this, the administration also, stringent immigration policies also led to increase in deportations of Nigerians. The report indicates that over 3,000 Nigerians faced deportation under these very, very measures, which not only affected individuals directly, involved, but also the broader implication for Nigerian diaspora and also their family. Then the economic implication. This administration trade policies, including the imposition of tariffs on various countries, raise concerns, potential impacts on trade relationship between U.S. and the African nation, which Nigeria is a big part of it, the giant of Africa. The AGOA Growth and Opportunity Act, which was set up to provide duty access to U.S. market for eligible African countries. This faced its own uncertainty due to these these measures due to the policies. And the weakening of AGOA also posed a risk to sectors like textiles and agribusinesses, which benefited from the program. And also the diplomatic relations. The diplomatic tension, also arose following the inclusion of Nigeria in the travel ban. The Nigerian government expressed concerns over the decision, emphasizing its commitment to addressing these very issues highlighted by the US. These developments, definitely strains relationship between the two nations. So, in summary, the administration policies, Trump's administration policies introduced challenges for Nigerian community in the US. This affects immigration opportunities, like mentioned, economic prospects, and also the diplomatic ties. And one thing is this: when people are being chased out of work impromptu and without without knowing what was coming to them and all that, in the end, it poses is a lot of risk, not only on the people, even on the economy. Because when people don't have jobs, when businesses are suffering and all that, people begin to think of a lot of things which lead to crime and corruption in the community. So as the administration is doing this, they should also be thinking of the kind of impact, that will come on the economy as a whole.
So, you mentioned something very key around business jobs. We know that one of the major impacts has been federal government layoffs, most recently as a measure to be able to bring some sort of a scaling down and to bring more efficiencies into the government by the administration. How has this federal government layoffs impacted the Nigerian community, if at all?
Nigerians, just like the United States a few years ago, cited Nigerians as the less than 1% of the Black community doing great things. Definitely, this layoff has impacted our community, even if we don't have a specific number for it. The layoff, because of the restructuring, like you said, within the U.S. federal government, which include Nigerian Americans. Those, but like I said, specific data, it's not there to be able to talk about it, but the scope of this workforce, include looking at the federal employment. Nigerian Americans employed in the federal agencies face job insecurity due to the administration efforts to downsize the federal workforce. Agencies like Department of Health and Human Resources, Nigerians are big in the health industry, and also the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. These sectors, these departments have, experienced substantial layoffs, with HHS planning to reduce its staff by nearly 25%, and the IRS drafting plans also to potentially have its workforce. Then the immigration services, the layoffs also have impacted immigration-related services. U.S. citizenship and immigration services terminated, nearly 50 employees identified as non-mission critical personnel in probation status. And guess what? Nigerian immigrants seeking visas, residency, and citizenship, this is where it also affects us. Looking at community service and support, The restructuring of the agencies like the health department, which oversees programs such as Medicaid, and community health centers, also face disruption services to many Nigerian American families, that rely on on Medicaid for healthcare and social support. Then economic impact. The layoffs also, contribute to broader economic challenge, including increased unemployment and reduced consumer spending, which can, affect minority communities, Nigerian Americans, particularly those, that are employed in affected sectors. They may experience financial hardship as a result. The federal government, layoffs and restructuring had multifaceted impacts on Nigerian American. This affects employment, it affects access to immigration, it affects community services, and it affects the overall economic stability. These individuals that are laid off, they will think of how to pay their rent. They will think of food. They will think of a lot of things, So, and apart from even people being laid off, businesses are folding up. So you have just, if businesses are folding up, companies are laying off, private companies also are also laying off because, a lot of the downsizing are also affecting them. How quickly can those people get jobs to be able to feed their family, to be able to pay their bills, to be able to... So I think United States is actually opening the door for a lot of crimes, corruption, and, some ill happening in the community.
You mentioned small businesses, and as the president and CEO of the Nigerians in the Diaspora Chamber of Commerce, small business is actually at the heartbeat, right? And we know the American economy thrives off of small businesses. Tell us a little bit about how the tariffs, we know that is the big news of the day over the last few weeks, is kind of the trade wars. There are those who have seen the trade wars as a way for countries to come to the U.S. to try to provide strategies so that the U.S. could potentially put themselves in a better position economically. How have these tariffs impacted Nigerian small businesses and those business owners? And obviously, what is the position of the chamber as it relates to these tariffs?
Yeah, as a president and CEO of the Nigerian Diaspora Chamber of Commerce, I'm deeply concerned. I'm very deeply concerned about the substantial impact that President Trump's recent tariffs will have on Nigeria-owned businesses in the United States. The administration actually imposed imposition of 10% baseline tariff on all imports, coupled with a specific 14% tariff on the Nigerian imports to the U.S. This poses challenges for our community. Then this poses challenge in areas like increased operational costs. Many Nigerian-owned enterprises in the U.S. rely on imported goods from Nigeria because we have to eat our food, we have to wear our clothes, and things like that. And also from other countries. These new tariffs, will elevate the cost of these imports, which leads to operational expenses. It leads to small businesses which often operate with limited profit margins. These small businesses will be the ones to suffer this increase in tariff. It will also difficultly absorb these increased costs. I mean, the small businesses, to be difficult for them to absorb this increase in costs, and consequently, they might be forced to raise prices. When you're not able to, when the operational cost is high, definitely what you want to do is increase costs. So it will force them to raise prices, potentially reducing their competitiveness and affecting customer retention. This will make them not to have that customer loyalty. And also in the area of supply chain disruption, the tariffs are very likely to cause disruptions in supply chains, especially for businesses that source unique products from Nigeria. For example, the enterprises dealing with specialty foods, textiles, and handcrafted goods. These enterprises may face delays and increased expenses in procuring these items. Such disruptions, can hinder the ability to meet customer demand and they maintain inventory. Another area is the strain and consumer relationship. Passing on the increased costs to consumers through higher prices may strain relationship, just like I explained earlier, with their customers base, with their customer base, because of often which often bring in price sensitivity. This situation is particularly concerning for our businesses. Predominantly African community serving the predominantly the African communities. This also where disposable income may be limited. Another is So in overall, strain on consumer relationships, supply chain, and increased operational costs. Then the challenges in business planning and growth. The unpredictability introduced by these tariffs complicates strategic planning for Nigerian entrepreneurs. Uncertainty regarding future trade policies and potential retaliatory measures from Nigeria or other nations. This adds risks to businesses. All we will keep doing as an organization, it's advocacy and support. So we'll keep advocating, engaging with policymakers to communicate the adverse effects of the tariff and seek exemption or policy adjustments, favorable to our businesses. Also, we're also in the area of education, informing our members about the specifics of the tariffs and providing guidance on compliance and mitigation strategies. Then we're also involved in resource sharing, helps to facilitate access to resources that can help businesses to navigate increased costs, such as identifying alternative supplies or exploring cost-saving technologies. Then in the area of networking, we create platforms for businesses to share their experiences, solutions, and also support during this challenging period we are faced in the United States. It's imperative for Nigerian business owners to stay informed and proactive. And the chamber does not just serve only Nigerian business owners. We are global. We serve the American community, the Nigerian community, other African emerging markets, because our primary aim is to bridge that gap between the emerging markets and the global markets. So collaborative efforts, within our community will be essential to adapt to these changes and also to continue to thrive, despite the current economic challenges. That's where we are right now as a Chamber of Commerce.
Well, Patience, we thank you so much for your time. We thank you for giving us some details into how the Nigerian community is impacted and how they're responding to the recent changes in the U.S. presidential administration. So thank you again, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. We know will be much more to discuss in the future.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure as always. My pleasure.
Our correspondent Maria Bird and CEO and President of the Nigerians in Diaspora Chamber of Commerce, Patience Key. We're off another break on The World Today. Still ahead. How high can you go? As high as the highest bid in the world? But we'll find out. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're staying in the United States. Attorney General Pam Bondi has revealed the arrest of the largest fentanyl trafficking in the country's history. She noted that the multi-agency operation was targeting the Sinaloa, one of the largest and most dangerous drug trafficking and foreign terrorist organizations in the country.
We're very proud to announce today a historic Sinaloa cartel arrest, and it marks the most significant victory in our nation's fight against fentanyl and drug trafficking to date. This multi-agency operation led by DEA with our local, state, tribal, and federal partners targeted one of the largest and most dangerous drug trafficking and foreign terrorist organizations in our country. The head of this organization, Sinaloa organization, here in the country illegally, 6 of these guys and women here in the country illegally. His name is Alberto Salazar Amaya. He is the leader, and he was living in Salem, Oregon. With him, they got millions of dollars, cash, cars, but the drugs were in Albuquerque, Phoenix, and Utah. That's how insulated these drug dealer cartel leaders make themselves. This was an incredible operation, and that's why I wanted all of you here behind me. There will be no negotiating, and we will lock you up for as long as humanly possible. We will not negotiate with those who are killing our family members, including brothers, sisters, daughters, sons, parents, friends, everyone in this room. It was sent to Mexico and came right in our country.
Well, newly elected Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany is kicking off his term with a visit to Paris and Warsaw, where he'll be engaging with talks with two German allies. The discussions will revolve around Europe's security, U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policies, and Europe's migration policies. It comes after Germany's parliament officially confirmed the Conservative leader as the country's new leader in a second vote after he suffered a shock defeat around the first time. With Germany in recession, the transatlantic alliance is on shaky ground, and the opposition and party, now labelled as extremist, Merz faces a host of challenges as he begins his term. Let's bring in Deutsche Welle's Kate Ferguson to speak more on this. Kate, thanks for joining us on the program. Why did Friedrich Merz experience this unexpected hurdle to become Chancellor?
Yeah, well, this parliamentary vote is usually just a formality, and that's because by the time it takes place, the work of forming a new government has already been completed. And this was the case here as well. Merz and his Social Democrat coalition partners had already appointed ministers and agreed on a programme for government. The fact that Merz didn't get enough votes the first time around reveals just how polarising a figure he is. This was a secret ballot, so we don't know what lawmakers voted against him. It's possible it wasn't just his Social Democrat coalition partners, but also members of his own Conservatives, perhaps a combination of both. Now, he is over the line, though, and given the challenges ahead, whether that's tackling Germany's weak economy or dealing with a fraying transatlantic alliance, this kind of fragility is not a good look. And it's really the opposite of the image Germany wants to be projecting right now.
What can we expect from the new German government in terms of foreign relations?
So Friedrich Merz says achieving independence from the United States is his top policy priority. He's pledged to spend hundreds of billions of euros on defence, and that is a real shift for Germany. He also wants to strengthen relations within Europe. His first planned trips are to Warsaw and Paris, and that's because he believes that Germany, France and Poland need to be aligned in order for the EU to govern decisively. He's also committed to doing more to help Ukraine, including potentially supplying it with long-range Taurus missiles, which the previous German government refused to do. Now, all this comes 80 years, almost to the day, since the defeat of Nazi Germany. And it reflects the end of the norms that were established in its wake. The United States is no longer considered a firm or reliable partner. The strength of NATO is in question. And Merz's job now is really to define where exactly the Germany of today stands in this new world order.
Kate, the main opposition party, the AfD, was recently classified as extremist by Germany's intelligence agency. How will that affect the new government's day-to-day?
Yeah, this is another huge challenge for Merz. The Alternative for Germany party got 20% of the vote in February's election. And according to some, but not all polling since then, it is now the most popular party in the country. It was labelled extremist for a number of reasons, including its belief that German citizens with roots in Muslim-majority countries should not have the same legal standing as citizens of other ethnic backgrounds. Some are now calling for the party to be banned on that basis, but I think this is unlikely to happen given its popularity. Before the election, Merz himself attracted huge criticism for teaming up with the AfD on a vote to tighten migration rules. Now he faces a tough balancing act. Treating the AfD normally will prompt accusations that he's legitimising extremism. Shunning them will spark accusations of being undemocratic. Either way, the AfD now represents a significant portion of the German electorate, and it's unclear whether being labelled extremist will increase or decrease their support.
Kate, thank you so much for breaking this down for us. And we're just a few hours now into the process of electing a new pope at the Vatican, following the oath of secrecy taken by all 133 cardinals and other officials helping with the vote. The doors to the Sistine Chapel have been closed, shutting the cardinals out from any communication with the outside world until a new pope is elected in the highly guarded conclave. We'll be giving you details as this happens. In the meantime, soaring 265 meters above the Beipan River, the Huajiang Grand Canyon Bridge is set to claim the title of the world's highest bridge when it opens next month in China's Guizhou province. The engineering will significantly reduce the crossing time over the vast gorge from 2 hours to 1 minute. Construction began in January 2022 and is now in its final stages. Well, that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.